What happens when a medical researcher from Michigan earns an MBA in Finland and takes a lily pad rest in Strasbourg, France, and takes on a finance across Europe and the US, all while navigating languages, laws, and cultures? Welcome to TP Talks, where we explore the fascinating journeys of global citizens who have reinvented themselves across borders and cultures. Today, I am beyond thrilled to be joined by Alexa Natori, who brings a very unique perspective as an international professional and global citizen. Hi, Alexa. Welcome.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you so much. And I'm actually beyond thrilled to be here today and talk to you and share.
Thank you so much. So, let's start with your story. Can you share how moving across different cultures and countries shaped who you are today?
Oh my gosh. I think the journey has been interesting. As you mentioned, I'm originally from Michigan. I went to college in New York and thought that I was going to go to medical school and was pursuing that in Boston and didn't get into Harvard Medical School and had a bit of a meltdown and just said to myself, okay, well, if I can't go here, then I'm going to just go to medical school in Europe. And at the time, a lot of the papers that I was reading at Harvard were coming out of Helsinki University. So that's how I ended up there. I spent a year there working in a laboratory and learning Finnish and trying to study for the medical school entrance exam in Finland. And unfortunately, I passed one level below in language what I needed to be able to take the medical school entrance exam. And I thought, okay, well, what else can I do? And while I had been at Harvard, I had also been doing finances for the lab. And I thought, okay, let me go get an MBA. And the rest is history. But I think, somehow I looked deep down inside of myself and said, what else can I do that I enjoy? Because for whatever reason, medical school wasn't happening. And since I knew that I was good with finance and accounting, I went forward with that and was able to get work in Finland immediately after getting an MBA. And I've kind of never looked back. I've enjoyed all of the challenges that I've had with finance. I mean, it's maybe not the same as treating people on a personal level, but helping companies achieve their financial goals and in turn helping their customers, I suppose. So for me, I think, it's I've had this opportunity to just really to shift and discover that I can be good at other things too, I suppose. I had a dream and that I had to be a bit flexible and agile with that dream because like I said, for whatever reason, it didn't work out the way that I had expected it to. Yet I found another completely different area where I have been able to excel and really, like I said, help companies in their strategic and financial goals.
That's really fascinating because, when I put together the fact that you were in Boston and then you linked medicine with finance and you said it's Finland, and most of us will say, oh my God, we'll think like two, three, four, five, 10,000 times. We'll do an analysis paralysis on why we should or shouldn't go international.
Right.
My question is, did you go through that? Or I feel like when I hear you, you didn't. You just kind of jumped. Tell me.
No, I really didn't. Like I said, I had an emotional meltdown. I will be honest with all of you. I had an emotional meltdown when I did not get into Harvard Medical School. I was working in a laboratory with a really well-known at the time infectious diseases doctor. He had gone to Harvard. I was running his lab. I had gotten so many great references. Everyone thought that I was getting into Harvard. And then I didn't. For me, it was just maybe in the meltdown, a bit of panic of what else do I do? And to be fair, I did get into another medical school, um, but it was just not the one that I wanted. So I, I think it was some sort of panic mode where I was saying, okay, what else do I do? It hadn't even dawned on me, international. And I said, okay, well, I'm reading all of these infectious diseases papers that are coming out of Helsinki University, and I thought, oh, well, that could be interesting. I should just go to Finland and go see what that's about. There was really no, sorry, maybe not the same thought train that maybe other people would have, but I think it was just out of fear and desperation, and that's maybe not always the best way to go, but it really somehow kicked me into gear to really go and explore all the different things that I had maybe never had the opportunity or didn't think of trying to explore before.
Wow, that's amazing. So, having done that, I'm sure you've had like some challenges in trying to continue your professional path and learning the language. What were some challenges that you met, and how did you deal with them, and what were the results? Tell us, give us a little taster test here.
Well, I would definitely say that learning the Finnish language is a very big challenge. It's not like any language that I had ever studied before. I actually, for the first 12 years of my schooling, I went to a French Catholic school. So French was a part of my growing up, and I studied other languages. Strangely enough, I was a Russian major in college
Oh,
with
wow.
yes, a minor in pre-med in chemistry. So I've had quite a bit of a path, but I'd say for me, probably in Finland, it was learning the language to begin with, and then you know once I kind of switched career paths, the language was still always there. I I spoke Finnish. I'll say that I spoke Finnish well enough to get citizenship. I had to take a citizenship test and everything. And I spoke Finnish well enough to one of the companies that I worked for. They had military defense contracts, and as a U.S. citizen, we cannot be privy to other countries' military defense, this, that, and the other. So there would be meetings that we would have at this company where I would have to be kicked out of the room
Oh.
because they were going to talk about about some other countries. I don't know. They would have drawings of the ships and things like that, and I shouldn't be seeing those things. So but that was the thing. Like I could speak to that level, but there would still be times where I think I never felt um comfortable enough to have maybe this kind of conversation in Finnish. And I think it's probably the same for me in French. So for me, there's always that language, barrier. But what I found is that people, for the most part, people in the workplace and even people just out in life, a lot of people are really forgiving when it's not your first language. And that's something that I appreciate. That's something that I, as a native English speaker, try to think about when I meet people whose first language is not English. Like you have to be a bit forgiving, because I think the language, it's not just a challenge for me. It's a challenge for anyone trying to navigate a career or just regular life in a country that's not theirs.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's one of the challenges. What is one of the proudest achievements that you can say, wow, I did it? What would that be?
I would honestly just have to say building a life and building my career. I started off in Finland. I didn't know anyone when I moved there. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything. I every time I've moved somewhere, I haven't necessarily had a job or a place to live or whatever. And those are things that I go and I get. Like I moved to Finland. I found an apartment. I found a job, and actually the job that I found at Helsinki University, it was through contacts in the US, but I ultimately found it. And then when I moved to France, I went and I found a job on my own. Like I didn't have any contacts, and was able to navigate through that just, in talking and meeting people and things like that. So I'd have to say that my biggest accomplishment is really going out and doing it and building something up that was me, that was mine.
That's amazing that you started basically from scratch and you built it up and you built a life and a career. That's very admirable. During that time, a lot of emotions, there's a lot of doubt, a lot of things that are happening. What was a kind of like a key motivator? What kept you going?
Um, in the beginning, when I was first in Finland, and like I said, I didn't know anyone, I think there was a little bit of pride behind it. Like when I didn't get into Harvard and everyone knew, and then I said, okay, I'm going to leave and start something else. For me, it was really not just proving it to the other people, but yeah, I did want to prove to other people, but then to prove to myself, because I had already had this really, really big disappointment. And then I made this crazy change and just said, I'm going to do it. So for me, in that moment, in that time, there was no failure. There was no going back.
Wow.
It was like I have to do this. I have to, not, like I said, not just for other people to see, but I have to do this for myself. To know that I can decide that I want to do something, to set a goal, and to know that I can achieve it. So that's what really kept me going in the beginning. And then I think, your life changes as life grows and whatever. Then later on in life, I had children, and then it was about, keeping going for your kids. And I think most of us older people who who have kids understand that it's the drive to make sure that your kids are okay, your family's taken care of, and all of that. But in the beginning, it really was about not wanting to fail myself, I think.
Wow, that's very admirable. I salute you. My goodness. I don't know how many times when I was switching from one country to another country where I would be down and I would have a hard time picking myself up and I would kind of lose my focus and then take it on again. But it's not an easy thing, and I think
Yeah,
it's important to know that we're not just learning the language, but then using the language to integrate and have that cultural, not just the cultural knowledge, but put the language and cultural knowledge together and make it work,
together.
right? And
Hmm.
that's really
Yes.
tricky. And so once when you moved from Helsinki to France and you had the children, how did you organize work and life and one of the questions that I know some people have is like, how did you organize with the languages within families, and how did you focus on one language here at work, and how did the languages how did you organize yourself when it came to languages and just life, work-life balance in general?
Well, I'll start with our home language is English, so that's, everything's fine there. Before we moved to France, the kids did like some kind of summer immersion course in French and everything. And like I said, for me, I had spent 12 years in French Catholic school. So granted, 20 years had gone by and I hadn't spoken any French, but when I got to France, it kind of started to come back and everything.
Mm.
So the kids, they went to French public school with an international section, so most of their courses were in French. And I think kids, they have minds that just absorb so much. So I think at their age, they were still like first, second grade. It was really easy to take for them. Um, then for me, with regard to work, the funny thing is that even though I lived in France,
Mhm.
I technically never worked. I never had a permanent contract in France. My permanent contracts came through Germany.
Okay.
So,
Okay, we add
so
another
for
country
the
there.
yeah, so let's add one more country in. So for the majority of the time that I was living in France, I did do some contract work, but my permanent contract, I worked for 5 years with a chemical company in Germany. So and the funny thing was is that my team, the team that I managed, they were both French, and
Wow.
um, but then we I think that my manager at the time was in Switzerland. I had another one at some point in Germany and another one in Singapore. So anyway, the company language was English, and the language I like I said, it was a chemical company, so I did work on the plant, and most of the people there were German, so there was German speaking all around me. I have to say, in that regard, like I've been quote unquote lucky that English has been was the language of the company in which I was working, and then the contract work that I did in France, I did one 3-month contract where the company language was French, and then I did contract work with the Council of Europe, but it was specifically for my English speaking skills, so that they needed my work. So in all of the countries where I've worked, English has been the primary language. I think I spoke probably more of the home language or the country language when I was in Finland. And probably had I worked in France more regularly, I would imagine it would have been more towards French speaking, but just the nature of the work that I was doing in Germany and the company language being English, it was English. So it was more the personal life, outside of work, navigating, going to the store and going to the doctor and all of those things more so in French.
Okay. And I know some of our listeners are probably wondering, well, how do you balance those two languages and how do you balance working in English and then coming home and speaking in French and the kids are doing their home in French? How did you organize this? Because just this weekend I was in Frankfurt visiting a dear friend and
Mhm.
they're French. It's a couple who's an Asian and French couple, and they have their child who's in school, and they're worried like, oh, geez, how do we do this? So I thought this would be a great question. How do you balance languages, family, work, and all of this, and still keep sane, if I may?
Well, I don't know if I'm still sane, actually.
Oh, come on, yeah, you are.
No, but I think that goes back to, again, I had the French 20 years backed up in my head. So I think that part for me came a little bit easier, but it was still the same kind of life that any family has. You make your schedule, you get off from work, you get the kids, you bring them home, you're making dinner, you're doing homework over here. um and of course, what I will say with the French public school system, and I would imagine, I would hope that with most foreign countries, when you have children who are not native speakers, of course there were the extra classes for them, so that was helpful for them. And I think, had I not already had a French speaking background, again, I was lucky that I have was in companies where language courses would have been an option too, to be able to help me. So I hope that there are other families who have that option, because I know it's hard when you go someplace and you don't learn the language. I can't imagine what it would have been like if we had been living in Germany and I would have, and I would have had to have been helping kids with German homework. In fact, when we first moved to France, and the neighborhood that we were in, the kids were actually put in a full-on French public school. It wasn't French with international section. It's full-on French public. So the second language was German, and my daughter came home one day with like German homework, and I was like, ah. I'm like, I don't really know how mommy's gonna help you with that. So So that's what I think, hopefully for other families that they have the opportunity to get some sort of language courses for the parents to be able to help the children in these new environments. But like I said, from my side of things, I think I was lucky to have had prior knowledge of French and could really sit down just like a regular homework night to be able to help the kids.
That's great. And during this time, did you have a community that you could kind of call upon, or certain people that could help you out in whatever X or Y things that you could say, yeah, this I can do by myself, but this something else like the German homework, or I need to ask someone. Did you were you able to have some kind of a like an international community or a local community that you could kind of call upon?
It took a little bit of time to find that community, and I always say, it was after the kids when they moved to the international school, and I would drop them off in the morning. And at that point in time, we were still fairly new to France, and I wasn't working at that time. And I was able to stand outside of the school with the other mothers and some fathers as well, who either were not working or could go into work much later. And that's how I started to build the community. And there was a group of us that we always said we don't know how we would have met each other had we not been working, to
Uh-huh.
be able to stand. And these are people who in the 8 years that I lived in France, that we've been there for each other. We've, I've taken each other's kids here and there, to really help each other out. Um, so I have to say, in that respect, I was lucky that I wasn't working, that it did take me some time to find that job in Germany because
Uh-huh.
I couldn't get hired in France. I don't know. But that's how I ended up making the community, is just with the other parents from the school having that opportunity to spend time with them each day.
So I hear what I hear you saying is to not hesitate and reach out and touch
Yeah.
someone, as you used to say, and just
Yes, yes,
that.
whenever there is an opportunity, because sometimes the opportunities are few and far between. So if I really think that, and I have to say I'm not even the most like outgoing person. As a child, I was very, very shy. But I actually think that this whole international move and really being on my own and having to fend for myself has made me more of still maybe not the most outgoing person, but I'm not afraid to go up to some you and you do you when you're by yourself, you have to not be afraid to go and ask for the things that you need, go to talk to people to find out, if they can help you with X, Y, and Z, or if they can point you in the direction of someone who can help you. So that's really one, I think maybe one of the biggest things that I've learned, that I learned in the 20 years of being there, is like coming out of myself and really asking for help when I need it.
Wow, what great advice. Like this has been just a wonderful interview, and I think I could go on and on, and there's so many questions, but considering the time, last question for those considering a more international career, but really are hesitating and have anxiety about it. What advice would you share from your experience to them?
I would say, first, if you can reach out to your network, if there are other people who are in the place where you want to be, or maybe not even in the place where you want to be, but they've had a similar experience, they've gone off and gone somewhere new. I would speak first with my network, to kind of understand other people's experiences and how things have gone. I would, just really try to, I think, do as I say, not as I do, and really, really, really think about the reasons why you'd like to go, and how it will maybe enrich your life or your skills, whatever. Maybe not just have a meltdown and go, but really.
Did fuel you somewhere along the way,
Yeah.
apparently.
But yeah, so to reach out to your network and to really think about the things, the goals that you're trying to achieve in uh, going abroad and building your career. So I think that those are the two main things that I would suggest to people trying to make the move.
Wow, wise words. So, if I what I hear is network is your net worth.
Yeah.
Think about your goals and then walk the talk. Is that
Yes.
kind of like
Yeah.
the summary?
And believe in yourself. I think that let me add that on to believe in yourself because it's we all have days, no matter what we're trying to do in life, that are hard and we get down on ourselves and unmotivated. But you really you have to believe in yourself. Even if other people don't, you have to believe in you.
Oh, that's a great way to end off and just oh, I love it. I love it. There's no word there. Thank you very much, Alexa, for sharing your path and your insights today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and seeing how you've carved your path globally and the valuable advice you've given for navigating the job market internationally. For those of you who are watching and listening to us, if you do have any questions, you can reach Alexa directly on LinkedIn. Now we're going to sign off, but Alexa, don't sign off yet. I'm just going to sign off on LinkedIn. Thanks to everybody who participated and joined us here on TP Talks Working Global. We hope you got some golden nuggets information here into your journey abroad. Be sure to follow me right here for more tips and tricks and interviews. Until next time, take care. And as Casey Kasem said, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Thank you very much. Bye bye.